Welcome to lecture 2, Sustaining Change. The topics that we're going to cover in this module are types of levers for change, tipping point and critical mass, and Rogers adoption model. It was Catherine Coolidge who said that landing great change is like landing a plane on an aircraft carrier in the ocean during a massive storm. Change your change management thinking. Now, the adoption of sustained new behaviors and ways of working is the purpose of all change management. It is an important part of change team's role to understand the significance of the levers available to promote change. It is through this understanding that the best change approach for a particular context can be developed. This can be adapted to changing circumstances as needed. Assessing change readiness, an indicator of adoption, will identify areas that need more focus and attention. Building momentum for any change is important. Sustaining that momentum until it becomes self-sustaining is one of the hardest challenges change practitioners face. To make a good dish, knowing the ingredients and having a recipe is a good starting point. However, the secret to the taste of a wonderful meal is that the chef knows how to adapt the recipe according to the ingredients and conditions in the kitchen on the day. For a change manager, in our example, the chef, sustaining change is the kitchen. Levers are our ingredients, and the theories that help us navigate change are our recipes. Adoption and levers. Now, motivation to change, uh, what we do and how we do it varies, depends on the individual and the circumstances. If there are no consequences for not changing, then why expend the energy? The key to influencing adoption is that the individual must believe that the cost or the benefit of change outweighs not changing. Now, the basis of this are three major strategies. Carrot, reward them for doing the right thing and having the right attitude. This reward may be financial or non-financial, but must be something they value. Another strategy is stick, impose a penalty for activities and behaviors that undermine the success of the change, remembering that in general, people are not deliberately doing the wrong thing. These penalties should start with minor consequences, such as the absence of rewards. Another strategy is burning bridges. Now, carrot and stick strategies can lose their effectiveness when used over the long term or repeated frequently. A strong but often neglected strategy is to make it impossible for your people to do things any other way. This requires a focus during the design of the solution. A simple example is in the embedding of a new system that automates a manual process. Change managers alone cannot identify and deal with every individual barriers to adopting the change. Sustaining change is a team effort. By working with a change network, aspects of the environment can be dialed up, down, switched on or off, and identifying these levers can create and maintain the required effect for the mass over a sustained period. Levers for change. Levers are basically the elements of a change that its landscape and its landscape that the change team can activate in some way to enable or support adoption on a broad scale. For a small amount of effort targeted in the right place at the right time can have a big effect on the outcome. And why use the levers? We use levers to avoid or minimize the harm from forces preventing adoption and encourage those that will have a positive effect. And we also use levers to influence individuals suitably so that they freely demonstrate and maintain the required new behaviors. The nature of systems thinking, seeing our world as a complex array of interdependent systems, all of which can influence each other, leads nicely to the concept of levers and leverage. It is often the small things that will have a big effect on the outcome. So what are the different types of levers? Now, levers that encourage people to adopt change fall into 5 broad categories. Number 1 are the emotional organizational levers. These are those that exert an internal pressure to change, such as guilt, pride, or feeling part of the in crowd. For example, the warm glow from being praised by a boss, or the peer pressure when you are the last person in your team to adopt a change. The second type of lever is the procedural organizational levers. These are imposed by the process that a person needs to follow. For example, the introduction of coding to ensure a sales order can't proceed until a specific box is checked on the order system, or performance management processes and structures. The third type of lever is the structural organizational levers. These are those that are implicit in the way the organization is controlled. For example, the way that elements of the organization are grouped together or managed separately, reward systems, and job design. The fourth type of lever is the environmental lever. These are the physical elements of the landscape, such as the office layout or quality of the training rooms. For example, if a change aims to automate a paper-based process, then the physical shelving and storage that was required to accommodate the paper should be removed, as both a symbol of the inevitability of the change and also as a way of burning bridges by preventing people going back to the old paper-based ways. And the last type of lever is the leadership levers. These are anything that influential leaders do or say before, during, and after the change. These may be formal leaders within the hierarchy or informal leaders who influence others without any formal authority. Well, not all change initiatives require the same level of adoption to achieve planned benefits. However, a good understanding of what success looks like will ensure that the right levers are chosen and applied in an appropriate way. Can I just give you an example? The General Data Protection Regulation is an European Union law that came into effect in May 2018. This law required significant changes to how personal data is collected, used, and managed by organization. Now, any organization, regardless of size, faces significant liability in the event of a breach. This regulation came into force over a 2-year period with a range of responses taken. Now, some organizations waited until close to the May 2018 implementation date to roll out new policies. Others started quite earlier on, working through a process using multiple levers to help employees understand the need to change. They provided training and adjusted roles to support employees' ability to make decisions on what GDPR meant for them, their supply chain, and customers. So examples of leverages used for this change includes procedural. Example of procedural levers would be redesigning processes and establishing data protection policies. Example of structural lever would be assigning new departments or roles. Example, data protection officers. Example of emotional levers would be campaigns around recent breaches and the impact of this on individuals and commerce to drive adoption. Now, by the time compliance was legally required, the cultures of the second set of organizations have shifted significantly. Breach risks were minimized and adoption rates achieved by a committed workforce. So here we've got some reflective questions. You could think along the lines of which levers have you observed being used in your organization or during a change you're familiar with, and how effective were these levers and in what ways? Change momentum and tipping points. Well, it can take effort to build momentum for a change initiative. It is even more challenging to sustain that momentum. As energy for the change builds and the groundwork for adoption is complete, there comes a point when it starts to feel easier. The momentum tips and changes become self-sustaining. The change reaches its tipping point or point of critical mass. Now, Chris Meyer in 2010 discusses how the concept of critical mass relies on the assumption that behavior is contagious, it could be good or bad, defining it as when the people and systems operating in a new way achieve unstoppable momentum. It is at this point that we can safely accelerate the switch to the new ways of working. The objective of the change manager and team now becomes protecting and reinforcing the momentum rather than creating it.